The saloon doors creaked open, letting in the cold wind of a dying evening. Every head turned for a second, then went back to their drinks, except for one man sitting in the corner, head tilted low, cigarette burning slow between his fingers. His name was Clayton Rowe, a cowboy known more for his silence than his gun. The kind of man who carried storms behind his eyes and left questions wherever he went. That night he didn't come for whiskey or women. He came to settle a debt no one else dared to touch. The barkeep, a stout man with a scar across his cheek, glanced at him nervously. "You riding alone again, Rowe?" he asked, polishing a glass that didn't need polishing. Clayton didn't answer. He dropped a pouch of coins on the counter, heavy, dull enough to make the room fall silent. "That'll cover it," he said, his voice low, rough. Carrying something that made even the gamblers look up. The barkeep frowned. "Cover what exactly?" Clayton's gaze drifted to the far corner, where a girl sat alone, her dress once white, now gray with dust and time. She looked up, startled when she realized the coins were for her. Her name was Evelyn Hart, and the stories about her had spread faster than prairie fire. Some said she was a runaway bride. Others said she'd once been married to a rancher who vanished in the desert. Whatever the truth, her eyes told more than any rumor could. Eyes that once held light, now drowning in shadows. Clayton walked toward her without saying a word. The sound of his boots on the wooden floor was slow, deliberate, like every step carried a choice. "You don't have to do this," she whispered, her voice trembling as he stopped beside her table. He placed his hat down gently, meeting her gaze for the first time. "I already did," he replied. "Now you just make it worth every dime." The saloon went dead quiet. The piano stopped mid-note. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn's hand shook as she gathered her shawl. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You don't even know me." Clayton looked at her with something between pity and pain. "Maybe I don't," he said softly, "but I know what it's like to be forgotten." That line, simple but heavy, hung in the air like a prayer. No one dared to move. They left together, stepping into the night where the moonlight painted silver across the dust. The town watched from the windows, whispering, guessing what kind of man pays without saying a word. Down by the river, they stopped near a broken fence. The water reflected the stars, and Evelyn finally spoke again. "You think money can fix what's been done to me?" she asked. Clayton shook his head. "No," he said, "but maybe it can give you one night where you remember who you were before all this." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, she saw in him something she hadn't seen in years, kindness without demand. She stepped closer, studying the man who'd paid for her freedom without asking for anything in return. "You don't want anything from me?" she asked quietly. Clayton's jaw tightened. "I want peace," he said, "and I figured helping you might buy me some." The night grew still. Crickets sang in the tall grass, and somewhere far off a coyote howled. Evelyn reached out, touching his hand gently. "You remind me of someone," she whispered. "Someone who promised me forever." Clayton looked down, his voice barely a breath. "Forever's just a word, Miss Hart, but tonight you can have real." She smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like property. She felt like a person again. They sat by the water until dawn painted the sky gold. He never touched her, not the way men usually did. Instead, he listened to her fears, her stories, her silence, and by the time the first light hit her face, she wasn't the same woman who'd walked out of that saloon. She was lighter, freer. Clayton rose, dusted his coat, and placed something in her palm, a silver coin marked with his initials. If anyone comes looking for you, he said, show them this. They'll know you're under my word. Evelyn blinked, confused. You're leaving? He nodded. Always do. She stood watching him mount his horse, heart pounding with something she couldn't name. Wait, she called. Will I see you again? Clayton turned his horse, tipping his hat. If fate's kind, he said, then rode off into the morning mist. As the sound of his hooves faded, Evelyn held that coin close to her chest. Maybe it wasn't about the money. Maybe it was about a promise, the kind that doesn't need words, only heart. And somewhere beyond the hills, Clayton Rowe whispered to the wind, make it worth every dime. A month passed since that night by the river, yet the memory clung to Evelyn Hart like a ghost that wouldn't rest. Every dawn she'd wake before the sun, half expecting to see that lone rider waiting near the fence again. But he never came. The coin he left her stayed warm against her chest, hanging from a thin cord like a shield against the world. Folks in town whispered about her still, said she'd run off with a killer, or worse. But Evelyn knew better. Clayton Rowe wasn't a monster. He was a man running from something far darker than the law, something eating him alive from the inside. One stormy afternoon, the quiet town of Willow Bend found trouble. Riders thundered in, 4 of them dust-stained and mean-eyed. Their leader, Reed Lawson, carried a black hat and a revolver with silver initials, the kind of man who smiled only when pain was involved. He walked into the saloon, boots heavy with mud and arrogance. I'm looking for a girl, he said, dropping a wanted poster on the counter. The barkeep's eyes widened when he saw the sketch, Evelyn Hart. That her? Reed asked with a sneer. Pretty thing. Belongs to me. The barkeep swallowed hard. She ain't here, Reed left weeks ago. Reed slammed his hand down. She left with a man named Clayton Rowe. You tell me where he went or I'll burn this place to the ground. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, fear grew thick enough to choke on. No one spoke. No one dared. Reed spat on the floor and left, his gang riding toward the North Trail, the one that led straight to the old mining hills. That same evening, miles away, Evelyn sat by a dying campfire near the ridge. She'd been trying to leave her past behind, but something told her trouble was coming. Then she heard it, and the sound of hooves. Slow, steady, familiar. She turned, and there he was. Clayton Rowe, coat dark from rain, eyes sharper than ever. You followed me, she whispered. He shook his head. Didn't have to. Trouble's already on your trail. She stood clutching the silver coin. You knew this would happen? Clayton exhaled, rain dripping from his hat brim. I knew the man you ran from, Reed Lawson. Used to ride with him years ago. Before I learned that some debts can't be paid with money. Her breath caught. You were one of them. Was, he said quietly. Until I saw what he did to women like you. That's when I paid my way out. The fire crackled between them, throwing shadows across his face and shadows of guilt, of a man fighting himself every day. Evelyn stepped closer. Why help me then? She asked. Why risk your life? Clayton looked at her, really looked, and in that silence, the wind carried everything he couldn't say, because maybe helping you is my way of settling what I owe. Before she could answer, a rifle cracked through the rain. The bullet missed by inches, splitting a tree trunk beside them. Evelyn screamed. Clayton spun, drawing his gun in one smooth motion. They found us, he hissed. From the trees, Reed's voice echoed, cold and mocking. You can't hide from me, Rowe. That girl's mine is, and I'll take her dead or alive. The next moments were chaos, thunder, gunfire, shouts. Clayton pushed Evelyn behind a rock and returned fire, his revolver flashing in the dark. He hit one rider square in the chest. The man fell without a sound. Another came charging through the brush, and Clayton tackled him head on. their fight brutal and muddy. Reed fired again, the bullet grazing Clayton's arm, blood mixing with rain. Evelyn grabbed his spare rifle and did what she'd never done before. Pulled the trigger. The shot rang true. Reed's hat flew off and he stumbled back, rage twisting his face. "You'll regret that, girl." Clayton stood panting and raised his revolver one last time. "No," he said. "She won't." The final shot echoed through the canyon, and Reed Lawson fell into the mud, his silver revolver sinking beside him. Silence followed. Only rain, only breath. Evelyn dropped the rifle, trembling. Clayton walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he whispered. "You're free now." She turned to him, eyes wide with tears. "And you? What happens to you?" He looked out over the hills. "Men like me don't get freedom, Evelyn. Just quieter kinds of prisons." He smiled faintly, blood on his sleeve. "But maybe tonight I'll sleep a little easier." As dawn broke again, she helped him mount his horse. "You don't have to go," she said softly. "You could stay with me." Clayton looked at her with the kind of sadness that only comes from loving something you can't keep. "If I stay," he said, "trouble will follow. You deserve peace, not ghosts." She reached for his hand, squeezing it tight. "Then promise me one thing," she whispered. "That someday when you're done running, you'll find your way back." He smiled, a small, tired smile that held more truth than any vow. "If I ever stop running," he said, "you'll be the first I find." And with that he rode off once more, disappearing into the golden horizon. Evelyn watched until he was gone, the silver coin warm against her skin, her heart whispering the same words he once did. "Make it worth every dime."